Hey everybody, I'm Mike Alcoholic.
Hi.
I'm going to try not to karate chop that tonight. Last time I spoke up here, I was so nervous I somehow made a mess. And, I always get nervous when I do this, and it's not like it's the first time or anything. It's just kind of, I don't know. It's probably me in the way, I would say. What am I going to say? Am I going to carry an adequate message to people? But God always, for whatever reason, gets me out of the way. What comes out, comes out. Like I said, I'm Mike Alcoholic. Let's get the sobriety date out of the way before I forget. I've done that before. It's May 18th, 2012, by the grace of God. So I always start my story out because I got a history in AA. My dad got sober in 1984. It was before I was born. Not by far, but before I was born. And so I grew up coming in and out of these rooms. I really didn't know what AA was. I knew people were friendly. They drank a lot of coffee and they smoked a lot of cigarettes. Back then, a lot of leather jackets in the rooms, and everybody smoked at all these tables, and it was pretty foggy in here. I'll say I've probably been an alcoholic since I was born, but realistically, since I was probably 9 years old. There is some drugs in my story. I'm not going to get into any crazy details, but in order for you to depict my story and what happened, do have to talk about some pills. So with that being said, Chuck hit on, I think all my life I felt inadequate. I've never felt good enough. I've always felt like there was something missing inside of me. And the custody battle that my mom and my dad went through probably drastically enhanced that. And she used me as a weapon, and I see it all the time these days, and it's just like, it tears me up because it destroys the child, and that's what happened to me, and not of my dad's fault at all. My mom was very angry at my father and accused him of everything under the sun, and basically I didn't see him for 3 years. And what I know now is that it was very hard on him. He was coming to AA, he'd been sober probably that time 6-7 years, but he did what AA told him to do. Pay your child support. The court says stay away from him. He did everything. Even his attorney was in the rooms back then. He's passed on now, but he did what he was supposed to do, and he got custody of me. And he was an electrical contractor. He started his business in 1987, the year I was born. And with all that being said, he started his life over. He went to Bethesda in 84. He went through Pinus Treatment Center, and that's where he met my mom. She was a cute nurse, had a Camaro, 24 years old, and I come along 16 months later. If you've been around the rooms long enough, you know that happens. So that's how we roll, some of us anyway. But I know I was a blessing to him, and he stayed at Bethesda, I think 19 months. He got a mobile home in a mobile home park, and they went through their battles and whatnot, and I came to live with them. And I remember, the craziest thing I remember about the disease of alcoholism in my brain is I never, at that point in my life, looked at my dad as like a success or a hero or anything of that sort. So I really didn't understand. But what I did know is that a kid that I grew up with was born with a lazy eye, and his dad sold narcotics to get his eyes fixed. And I thought that was the coolest shit ever. Like, that was pretty awesome, and I don't know, for whatever reason, it was the hip-hop culture back then in the early, mid-'90s, and I just gravitated toward that. And I remember my dad telling me we'd ride through the west side because I went to school over there, and I'd see a house with people out front, bags, drinking beer and stuff, and I'd just ask, do you think they got drugs there? Never done it in my life, but just that curiosity was something not right in my head as a kid, To make a long story short, I started experimenting. He married a lady in here, and she was like 3 years sober. I don't know where he was at that point, maybe 10. And everything was good for a while. He bought a house, moved in. She had two children. Ashley was 7 years older than me, Casey 9, so I had some step siblings. And Ashley was 14, I think, when they moved in. So she was in high school, and she was experimenting. And so at that point, some stuff came in the house. And she was an attractive girl, And so all the guys were always around. They were always giving her weed and alcohol and stuff. And to get out of the house on school night, she'd take me with them. And that was the first time hanging out with these older guys that I looked up to and was smoking pot. I'd take a few sips of drink with them and stuff. And they thought it was just funny when I got stoned. But I felt on the inside a part of, like that anybody else my age would want this, and I got it. That type thinking. And, so that's how it begun. And she, the lady that my dad met in here, she had some major psychological issues. Never did get back right. They divorced, and she ended up relapsing and dying from this disease. She never did get back right. Ashley moved out, got married. My stepbrother, he was killed from alcoholism. And I was always troubled in school. I went through back then, they prescribed Ritalin and Adderall and things like that for troubled kids. Today, not so much because they know the effect it has. But I think that enhanced my alcoholism. There were just things that I did as a kid that aren't normal. I had asthma, and I would get in the closet and hit that inhaler until I pass out. Not even knowing that I was getting high. I had no concept that is getting high. It just made me feel different. I never told anybody about that until I got sober, and I just thought about it one day. I was like, dang, that's pretty sick behavior as a child to do something like that. So anyway, I when they were living there and I was, doing stuff with her and sneaking out and there were drugs readily available in the house. Didn't do so much alcohol at that time. I'll get to that. But when she was gone, she got kicked out. He divorced her mom. I started doing pretty good. I started playing sports, and I kind of got in with a little bit of an in crowd. At least I thought I did. Never felt like I was in, but maybe I was. Who knows? Grades went up. Things got better. And then I got to high school, and that's when all hell broke loose. I was able to get connected again, and I didn't care about anything but drinking and getting high. So that led me into the legal system. And I think I was 15. I got my first charge, still in a car. And, they just basically pat on the wrist. I had the keys. It was my daddy's car. I'd steal his money in the middle of the night and drive to Hope County from Southern Pines and get stuff. And then somehow or another make it back home. I don't know. One guy sitting here tonight with me that went with me. I'd pick him up on the way. We'd have a little change out of the change jars at the house or whatever we could get. And anyway, he ended up finding out one night. He went to look for me, hit a deer, and it was like his ass going to jail now. He went straight to Carthage and had me arrested. And it didn't faze me because they slapped me on the wrist. I think I felt like it might have given me a little street credit or something. It wasn't long after that I did get my first major drug offense charges, felony charges, and ended up staying. He left me in jail that time, so I had a pretty good bond. I don't know, I did more than I had money for anyways. And he left me in there in J block because I was 17, in juvenile block. There's nobody else in there. And, I begged and begged and begged. I knew he had the means to get me out. He would not get me out. I was like, you want to be a man? This is what it's going to be. Finally, one of the members in AA was a different attorney. He got my bond lowered, got me out, and come to find out, the money he went to go get me out with, I had already stolen to get the stuff I went in with. But he still came and got me, and he gave me an ultimatum, and he said, you're either going back to jail, and I'm going to put more felonies on you because it was over $500, or you're going to treatment. So this was my first bout with treatment. I said 17, I might have been 16 at this time. So I went to Bethesda Link, and I did not want to be there, and there were kids coming in detoxing, and I'm like, I thought in my head, my problem was if everybody leave me the hell alone, let me do what I want to do, everything will be okay and maybe give me a little money. Because I compared myself to these other kids that were coming in, and they were strung out on heavy drugs and all this stuff. And for me, I like to drink a 6-pack, smoke pot, maybe eat a Perks here and there. That's where I was at in my addiction at the time. And I remember coming in here and everybody saying the not yets, the not yets. And I was like, shit, I thought I was smarter than all y'all, quite frankly. At 16 years old, I'm smarter than all of y'all. I got it figured out. Little did I know, right? Ended up getting kicked out of that place after 5 months. I ran away, and they just were trying to help because of my dad being in the AA community. And back then, all of the people that worked there and whatnot were all in recovery. And so they tried to help out. They finally were like, we can't do nothing with him. I remember getting out, and I didn't go back to high school because I wasn't going to school anyways. I went to work doing electrical work. That was always my crutch. My dad owned an electrical business, and after being in recovery for all those years, he became pretty successful. And so I always had a job, and I liked electrical work, and I definitely liked it when I was that age because I was paid well, and kids my age they got allowances. They weren't getting $400 or $500 a week. And also I could do what I wanted to do on the jobs. Most of the guys, I was their drug dealer, and they covered for me as long as they had good pot to smoke. They didn't care what the boss man's son did. Whatever, dude. Do your thing. Sleep in the truck. Whatever your dad rolls up's on you. It wasn't long after I got kicked out of there. 11 months later, I got the same charges that I had the first time. And this time the court system didn't just give me the deferred prosecution and misdemeanor conviction and all that. They gave me felony convictions. And I got 3 years probation, and I went through the levels of that probation so fast and changed. POs were telling, I can't do nothing with them. You take them. And finally this one got me, and she's come in the office, I'll never forget it. She looked at me and she said, I'm your new mom. And I thought, we're going to get along real good. I had mommy issues, so she sent me down the road a couple of times. And now she works up here at the Plaza at one of those women's stores or whatever, and I seen her. She's a super nice lady, and all she wanted to do was help me. And I thought she was a witch. You know what I'm saying? Just leave me the hell alone. Why you got to drug test me? You don't have to do it. You don't have to, She ended up violating me multiple times, and spent Christmases in jail and all this stuff. And I had somehow manipulated my dad into hating her too, and ended up, I got the last violation, and it was over. And I cooked up some big thing going into the military. I did the MEPS in Raleigh and did all this stuff, and I had her sold on it, and I thought I did. I had everybody sold on it for that matter. And I went in front of the judge, and he's a veteran. And he just looked at me and he said, young man, you go do your time. We're in the height of war. If you still want to go in the military when you get out, I'm sure they got a spot for you. And I couldn't believe they sent a guy like me to prison. Don't know who the hell I am. I mean, that was the attitude. That's the mentality. I went to prison at 19 and went to Polk, and it was, man, as soon as I could get my hands on something, I was on it. Went to the wake, and I was the youngest guy on the prison yard. I was 19. And for whatever reason, I gravitated toward the guys. I thought they were old back then. They were my age now. But they were big. They were muscular, and I was so worried about the outer appearance. That's what I wanted. So I started working out with them, and they kind of mentored me. They were trying to look out for me and make sure I tried to stay out of the BS on the prison yard, because there were gangs and there was stuff that, even though it was honor grade, you could get into something if you really looked for it. And a young guy, being as naive as I was, could find it. They took me some meetings. They took me to church and things like that with them. They were actually trying to mentor me. They were probably pretty good guys, and had already been down that road that I was headed. But in there, my probation officer did do something great for me, and she made me get my GED. And when I went to Sand Hills to get my GED, I seen the life there, the girls, and I was like, damn, I want to be a college student. I'd always wanted to be a college student. All my buddies went off to these universities, and they'd stay up all night drinking keg beer and snorting coke and keep 4.0 GPAs, and I just couldn't figure it out, man. I was like, how do they do it? I was never a functioning alcoholic. Never functioned. When I was on it, I was on it. There was no middle of the road or, I got some responsibilities. No. It was that. That was it. And anyway, I didn't stay long. I dropped out the first semester. I failed at everything I ever tried to do because of alcoholism. While in prison, I cooked it up that for whatever reason, this alcoholic's got a good daydreaming brain. And in there, I made the decision that I was going to be a marine biologist. Where the hell that? We don't even live near the beach, 3 hours from the beach. I was going to be a marine biologist, and I wanted some rims on my car and a sport bike. And I was going to be buff. That was, and I worked toward those goals. And actually, to be honest with you, when I got out, I had gotten off the other stuff, and I knew I was going to smoke weed because I smoked weed all the way through my prison sentence. Dipped the cup on them. I don't know how I didn't get caught. I was very lucky. I got out. I obtained those things quickly. I went back to work, doing electrical work. I started doing some classes at Sand Hills to work towards that marine biology degree, and I just couldn't keep it on the rails. At this time, you know, my drinking really took off when I got put on probation, and she worked me through those levels to where I was drug tested weekly and nightly. She'd come out of the house and randomly pop drug tests on me and stuff, and I quickly found that alcohol was my out, you know, and the drinking really took off. And then I found out the methadone too, but didn't show up in a drug test. So that really took that route. I mean, it was like zombied every night. So I went right back to that after I got out of prison and lost it all, you know. And I stayed on that road for a while. Somehow I ducked the law. I say that, but I did get some more trouble. I got some assault with deadly weapon charges, and I always, for whatever reason, was able to get good attorneys that got the stuff dropped down until the last time. I stayed on that road, and it got to the point with alcohol to where it terrified me because for whatever reason, something happened to where I went from drinking and getting that warm, fuzzy feeling, the Superman cape, the confidence to talk to the girls and laugh and want to dance and all that cool, fun stuff, to an absolute insane drunk, dangerous to myself and others. And it wasn't every time, and that's probably what drove me to continue to figure it out. Was there were nights I'd have that fun, and then there were nights where I lost friends that never to this day have talked to me since. Said I was possessed. I backed off of the alcohol, and obviously I have to do something because I'm an alcoholic, and I enhanced the other stuff. And basically what ended up happening was I was desperate. My dad relapsed while I was in prison. He went to the doctor for a knee injury, and they prescribed Lortab. And he was a heroin addict from the 70s, wino, you know, and it set that disease off. And here I am running around telling him all my business, you know, and it hit him one night, and he asked me to go get some stuff for him. And first I said no. And I went downstairs, and I got to thinking about it, and I was pretty desperate to get some stuff. And he had done very well for himself, so I went back up, and first lick was $600. He said, go get what you can get me for that. And I went and got him, and he gave me part of it. So, you know, and then I was able to have the traffic in and out of the house, and everything that he stopped me from being able to do, I was able to do. And I just used his addiction basically against him to manipulate him, control him, because I was the connection. It didn't take but 3 years for him to lose everything. Ended up, I got in trouble for knocking off a drugstore. I had an apartment over in Pinehurst, and they raided it. They charged him. They charged me with guns and just everything. There was all kinds of stuff, money and thousands of prescription pills, breaking and entering a pharmacy. Got him with trafficking by possession, which is just as bad as anything else, you know. And then they got me with some conspiracy stuff, and I just had a slew of charges. And I was sitting there, and I'll never forget sitting there, and I felt myself. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced that, but I could feel myself, I was dead spiritually, but I could feel myself physically dying day by day by day, sitting on the couch. And I would sit there for so long that my legs were becoming immobile, you know, because I wasn't moving. A damn dog, poor dog, I wouldn't even take him out to use the bathroom. I was so zonked out. And I loved that dog. I was very suicidal at the time. My dad was suicidal at the time. I intervened on him. It was pretty horrific. When they come in and they got me, they got him up the road and put him in cuffs and put him in a car and took him onto the road. I didn't open the door for him. They knocked it in, and it was almost like I was terrified, but it was a sigh of relief. I really didn't understand the severity of trouble I was in because, you know, for whatever reason, this alcoholic, my dad used to tell me all the time, for whatever reason, your brain thinks the rules don't apply to you. They do. That's always been a struggle. So they put us in jail together and, you know, give us this ridiculous bond. And so there was no way of getting out. Hell, we done run through everything anyway. There was no land. There was nothing. And sat in there, and it was hell. The detox, the withdrawals. I had never went without. And I remember talking about it like I'm Jones, and my dad would look at me and say, "Well, you don't know what the hell a Jones is." That was the laying on that cold floor in that jail with no medication to help me, no IV fluids, nothing, for 6 weeks. It was horrible. I looked like a ghost, and it took me a while to get my strength back. You know, I knew I was going to prison. I talked to Becky Carlson and talked to the Nate, accepted me into some treatment center long term, and they're like, "No, we're not letting you out of jail. You're a threat to society." And they wanted to stick me with it was 225 to 279 months is what the trafficking charges they were trying to put on me, which they had me charged with. That's what my damn plea bargain was for that. And a lawyer said, thank God, you know, his wife, my lawyer's wife, I can say his name, Bruce Cunningham, his wife was my teacher in the 8th grade and thought the world of me. And I told him to tell her I said hello, and he fought hard for me. And they ended up giving my dad a plea deal because they knew he was involved, but they knew he wasn't selling out here on the street. He wasn't selling drugs and whatnot. He was just a junkie. And ended up giving him 90 to 117 months. And after a year being in jail, they come back and offer me the same plea deal as him, but with boxcar sentences. When I went back in front of that judge for, God knows, I've probably been in front of him 8 times. Nobody was in the courtroom. All those friends that I had in that cell phone, so-called friends and all that stuff, it was me. And for whatever reason, that man allowed me to get the same plea bargain as my dad did. And he took those boxcar sentences on top of that 90 to 117 and put it in with that. I still thought my life was over. I mean, 7.5 years minimum to almost 10. I was like 23 years old. You know, I'd been in there since I was 22, and I'm like, God, my life is over. It's over. I couldn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. So I thought, you know, my age, I was going back to Polk, and I'm like, damn, this is the real deal this time. Like, they ended up sending me to Central Prison, and they sent him to Craven. I heard he went, because he went out in July. I didn't go out to December from the county jail. Heard he went to Craven. He processed, went to Harnett. Not too bad. You know, those are pretty sweet camps. You know anything about prison, North Carolina? They sent me to CP at 23, and I was like, holy cow, what? You know, I come in, and I'm standing next to a guy that's in a red jumpsuit. I had no idea what that was at that time. I've seen some yellow ones. I mean, he's a cubicle. I'm within arm reach of an inmate on death row. And thinking, still got that in my head, how the hell could this happen to me? Don't they know I'm such a great guy? You know? But I wasn't a great guy. That alcoholism had me, I was demonized by addiction and alcohol. I'm not the same person sitting up here today that I was then. Not even relatively close. So anyway, when I was there, I always knew about Alcoholics Anonymous. I'd seen it work, though I didn't ever want to tell anybody it worked, because y'all would be right. I went to a meeting and got a 3rd edition big book, and I went, and there was a couple volunteers that come in. I was feeling it, but I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready yet. As crazy as that is, and what all I'd been through, I just wasn't ready. I ended up going to Tabor City from there, which they call the Rock, and it looks like the Rock. When you pull up, it's like, oh God, you know, you see people all in the windows, throwing gang signs, like, this is great. I'm a preppy ass boy from Pinehurst. This is gonna be fun. But I can adapt. As an alcoholic, I can adapt to anything. I can turn into a chameleon real quick. So, you know, I stayed there for a while, and then I heard about this program called ICP. It's an inmate construction program, and they had electrical, and I just needed the test, because thank God I had that going for me. So I took that questionnaire, and most people are like, yeah, bro, it's going to take you like 3-4 months to get out of here. They got me out of there 4 days. So I went to work at Birdie Correction on the medium unit there. We were in close custody, but we were treated like medium inmates. As long as we worked and we kept our nose clean, they didn't mess with us. So it was party city. I mean, we had bottles of Freon, and it was cheaper to buy drugs than it was cigarettes. We didn't even smoke cigarettes. We smoked joints. Like, what's the point? You know, $5 for a cigarette, $2.50 for a joint. what's the alcoholic gonna choose? They were making alcohol in the chases and stuff, and during the day, because we got oranges and all that in our little pack outs, and they could get sugar out of the cafeteria and yeast and stuff, and they made some damn good 2 cups of that stuff, and you didn't have a tolerance, you were toast. Like they were trying to figure out how the hell to lock you in your rooms so you didn't get everybody knocked off. Boys knew how to cook. So anyway, I did that for 6 months, and I found out that the guy was true to his word up there. It was Kyle Brown back then, and he said, if you do 6 months of this, I'll get you where you want to go. And I'd heard that Harnett had family members on the yard. There were a set of brothers there, another father and son. So I wanted to go where my dad was at. And he was true to his word. He sent me there. And, got there. The yard was closed. The first night I got on the yard, I got right. That's what I do. I was stuck on the pipe bunk. I didn't want to talk. I didn't know nobody. I was just kind of, who wants to be in a situation like that, though? That's the insanity of this thing. Like, you're around hardened criminals, and you lose your mind where you can't function the first night you get somewhere. You ain't felt nobody out or nothing. You don't know what's going on. That's how I rolled, though. And next day, I stayed there. I was in prison 30 months before I got sober. I rocked and rolled in there, and I thought that using IV drugs and all the stuff that I did on the street was my bottom, but it wasn't. I had to keep going down that road, and in there, at that camp was a medical facility, and they put rubbing alcohol on the yard, like from the weight pile for people to clean their hands with, and the guys quickly found out that you can boil that with a little salt and separate the alcohol from it and have pure rubbing alcohol. That lasted for about a month. They were rolling people around in wheelchairs. We got drunk on it. They giving methadone out and everything else you can think of in the window. People were spitting it back in cups, and it was so nasty you'd have to mix coffee with it to get it down because it was slobber. They'd have to hold it till they got back to the dorm and spit it in a coffee cup. So that was my bottom. That really got my, what am I doing? And then I was doing ultrams and all that stuff, and trying to just take these massive, just trying to feel something, piss pills that would make you hallucinate. I was just desperate. And I messed my money up. I had $40 a week. I was very blessed. I had some money hid when I got locked up to where I had a family member go get it and was able to dish it out to us. Well, $40 ain't a lot for a fiend. And my dad, he'd gotten back sober. When he got locked up, he didn't have a AA book in jail, but he had a Bible. And he knew that connection with God would do the trick. And, I went to him. I'd messed up, and I said, man, I need you to help me out a little bit. He said, what is it now? What have you done? And I told him, I said, I owe some boys some money, and they want it. I got to pay them, And at first he was like, man, that's on you. That's on you, buddy. And later on, he said, I tell you what, I'll give you the money, but you're going to come to 2 meetings a week with me. The yard's closed at night, and the damn thing to do is sit in that dorm and watch TV on your little radio. And of course I was going to do that if he was going to support my dope habit. Why not? I don't know what happened. I can't really describe in words what happened. I know I went to a bunch of meetings, picked up a bunch of white chips, and I heard something. It always gets me. For whatever reason, I decided in a meeting that I was going to give AA a try. All walls were broke down. I didn't know what to do. So I asked my dad the next day on the yard, I said, what? I want to give this thing a shot. I want to do this deal, and no bars hold. Because I knew if I held back, it wouldn't work. And then people would come to me later and say it didn't work because, and I didn't want no loopholes. I didn't know if it was going to work. I really didn't know. I had no faith in nothing. But he looked at me and he said, I can't sponsor you. You never listen to a damn thing I've had to say. But I know a guy that can, and I think y'all would be a good fit. I said, okay, hook me up with him. So he pointed the guy out the next day, and I was like, shit, I ain't want to be seen with this dude, man. Had a ponytail, you know, and the prison yard down there had SOAR programs. So I had a lot of sex offenders. And I'm thinking, man, I ain't hanging with this dude. I'm 24 years old, you know. That's going to mess my reputation up. But for whatever reason, I was compelled to, I did it. You know, I met with him out the gate. He told me, he said, do you have any kind of concept of God? I said, yeah, I can pray. Little did I tell anybody, I'd been praying since the day I got locked up. And I damn sure started praying hard when I got sent to Central Prison at 23 years old, a 165-pound white boy. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't tell nobody that, but that was real. God keep me safe, help me to give me the strength, do what I got to do to protect myself every day. Every day. And so I did have a mustard seed of faith. God protected me. He took me through that, you know, and he told me to read and pray. He gave me a daily reflections, and I remember every morning that was my thing. Like before my feet hit the ground, because I'm that person. When my feet hit the ground, I'm gone. All right, I won't backtrack. I'm wide open. I got one speed, wide open. So I'd sit up, I'd pray in the morning, you know, and I was shy about it. Get on my knees. I didn't do all that. And there was some Muslim guys that did, and they were proud of their faith. I was shy about it. You know, it took me years before I would do that in front of people. And we started working the steps out the gate, just to sit, which is what I needed. I didn't need nobody to sit around and baby me, and I ain't never needed that. We started going through the steps, and the guy had actually been sober out in the free world for many years and relapsed on alcohol and committed murder while drunk. He got 21 years. Just a blackout one night, just lost his shit, shot somebody. Could have very well been me. I was that type of alcoholic. Been in a lot of situations where if I'd had a firearm, it was something would have happened. By the grace of God, I didn't. Anyway, I ain't gonna break all the steps down to y'all and all that stuff. Sponsors are for that, but I will tell you what happened was within somewhere around the 4th, 5th step. I might have done my 5th step. There was a peace that come over me like I'd never known. I'd always been in turmoil inside, and I got this peace, and I'm in prison. I had like over almost 6 years to go. Walking the prison yard with my dad, and he asked me one day, you know, there's all this shit going on that you can see. If you've been in there long enough, you see the moves, and it's not a rest easy place. He asked me sincerely. He said, "How you doing?" And without thinking, I just said, "Man, I'm good. I'm at peace." And I didn't even think about it at the time. We continued on our conversation, walking the track out there. Later on, he said, "You know, I waited all your life to hear you say that." So that's what the steps did for me in a nutshell. They've done a lot more, but that is what they did for me. They released, you know, God released the obsession to drink immediately. When I give myself to this program, I no longer fought. I no longer had to fight. I've not, to this day, granted, there's been thoughts. I've been out of the lake, life's gotten good. I've been at the lake, seen them cold beer sweating in bikinis, and thought, damn, boy, the course would be good right now. But the desire, like the y'all know what I'm talking about. That anchor never has hit me again by the grace of God. Ended up leaving that camp. Raleigh greened us up, man. I got a TA position, electrical wiring. I was at home, had some creatine, you know, was doing great at at Harnett, but I was nonviolent, and they had a lot of other people coming in. They sent me to Sanford, which I did not want to go to. I worried the shit out of them to go to Hillsborough because they had it going on, work release and all that stuff. They sent me to Sanford, and they sent my dad down to the one that just closed down here in Rayford, Hope, and medical facility. And anyway, when I got to Sanford, I lost that sponsor that I had for that. I was a year sober when I left, and I just kept doing the deal. He told me before I left, he said, "You finna leave, Mike. You know I can't sponsor you from here." I said, "You got to stick with it. You got to get you a sponsor and stick with it." When I got to Sanford, there was no inmates working the program. The ones that were going to AA wanted levels. They wanted work release and passes. That's all they give a damn about. But I jumped into that little group, and I'm able to actually go back to that group today. How they let me back in that facility is beyond me, but everything is. Anyway, I jumped back in and I asked the first volunteer that come in, little Don, he's my man, he's good people, but little did I know at the time he had a lot going on with his family life and he wasn't available to sponsor. But I asked him to sponsor me and he said, no, I can't sponsor you. I'm thinking, asshole, dare you, And then I met a guy that had come, who was my current sponsor today. He's out of Sanford, John Kay. I was a volunteer at Hornet. He'd come in and speak and stuff, and he come into Sanford. And I asked him, and he said, absolutely, let me get your name, office number, address, and I'm thinking, after that, I'm thinking that's about as far. Man, I had a letter in 4 days, typed, signed, So we went back through the steps via mail for 3 years, and that kept me involved. Now, granted, my recovery has not always been just super grounded and in this thing. I got sober in prison. It was very hard. The dope man slept two feet from me. I could reach over. He's my man's. Give me whatever I want. We'd sit there and bullshit all night. But there was a lot of temptation. But I stayed in it, man. He sent me all the literature. I read all AA approved literature multiple times, and I enjoyed it. I'd lay there and read, and I'd hope nobody would see me laying there crying because it identified to the heart so deep. It was like, this gets me. This book gets me. What I've been feeling, it puts into words what the hell is wrong with me. Obviously I want what I want right now. Like, I want what I think I deserve right this second. So I thought that you could get work release within 3 years of being released. Well, none of that happened on my time. Nothing's ever happened on my time. I did get passes my last, I think, 30 months, something like that. John was able to take me out, and I went to the Central Carolina group, and they were phenomenal. People, I thought when I walked in that door that I had inmate tattooed on my forehead and that everybody was going to judge me and look at me some kind of way. But man, it was like I was a family member walking in there. That all were, it was just so much love in that meeting. And they put me right up there reading, and I'm nervous as hell. Like, oh my God, everybody knows. And ended up speaking up there, and it probably saved me to do that. Old behaviors would always kick in. I've always liked money, right? And me being on work release and out the gate and close to my hometown, I was able to get stuff in a hustle. And $40 to be a bodybuilder in prison ain't gonna do it, But staying grounded in AA always kept me back on that path. And by the grace of God, I never took a drug or a drink while I was in there or since I've gotten out. So to fast forward a little bit, I got all the things that were blessings while I was in there. I did get work release the last 18 months. Didn't get to keep none of the damn money because I owe $85,000 in drug taxes. But I did get a 40 click out of it. And at that point, I had run out of money. So it was like it all aligned for me. I will say right before I got out, Dad was diagnosed with cancer. You said I don't say anything. But anyway, he passed away in there. But I did, by the grace of God, get to make amends. That was a huge blessing. Thank God I got to do that. And he, for whatever reason, was the last on my list. Like I was one of those when I got to the men's with my current sponsor, like I wanted to hit these girls up and let them know, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry. I'm freaking big now too, girl, I've been in prison for 8 years. He didn't think that was a good idea. He told me to leave him the hell alone. You done did enough damage, leave him alone. But I put my dad off to one of my last amends. I don't really know why it was so hard for me to do. But he finally, when he was terminally ill, I was like, dude, don't you think it's time to make amends to your father? yeah, I guess it is, So I had to do that through mail, and I wrote him, a 2-page letter, and, obviously he was gracious for that. That was huge, though, that I was able to do that while he was still alive. When I got out, I know we're almost out of time. When I got out, Mom wanted to pick me up. My mom and I had, at this time, somewhat rebuilt our relationship. She was coming to see me, and, but what clicked in my head, we had a place in Fayetteville. It was my grandmother's place. She passed away while I was in there, too. And so I had somewhere to go, but I didn't have no damn job. I didn't have any money. But for whatever reason, I was sponsoring all these guys in prison, and I was telling them about the halfway houses, and you need to go to a halfway house and all this. But for whatever reason, in my brain, I thought I was better than a halfway house, so I had shit figured out. It hit me one day right before my release. I mean, we were like 6 months out, and I was in the car with my sponsor and his wife, and I said, John, I think I need to go to a halfway house too. And he was over Bethesda over here, and he just turned around and he looked at me and he said, you think? That's all he said, you think? And I'm thinking, you rude asshole. But he was right. I mean, and that's how God's always spoken to me. It just hits like a light goes off, and it's like, what the hell makes me think I'm better than the guys that I sponsor? The hell, they got family. Some of them got family with money. I ain't got shit. Anyway, he got me in, obviously, at Bethesda, and 2 AA people picked me up. He had just had back surgery, couldn't even damn walk. Still came and picked me up at the gate with another guy driving this in recovery. And took me down here, took me to a meeting, took me down here, fed me, and dropped me off. And I had heard that the chance of success, if you hit a meeting your first day out of prison, is just like tenfold. I went to 3. I come straight down here. Very fortunate for me, I'm from here. There was a lot of my buddies that were in recovery, and it was like, I knew this is where I needed to be. Fast forward, life's gotten good. I was able to get my electrical license, which I didn't ever think was possible because of my record. And it took me a long time. It took a lot of tries and a lot of letters. And, I finally had gotten complacent where I was at. I was working for a guy, and he was phenomenal. He paid me well. He treated me well. He was a good Christian man. And he got diagnosed with cancer, and he's like, you need to do this deal, man. Do you want to go work for anybody else? You want to go back to Fowler? Oh, hell. No way. And, it was a struggle coming in. I had bag of Goodwill stuff that was, and some towels and stuff that people up there in AA give me. And I'd come in the rooms and I'd look around at guys that I knew had been sober 6 months and had a badass ride out there and getting their own apartment. And I'm like, man, here I am making $11 an hour, and I got 10% off the gross of that coming out. I'm not. I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. There's nothing. I don't know how this is going to happen, but I knew it would if I kept doing AA. There was something in me that just knew it was all going to be okay. Closest I've come to taking a drink, and I'm going to tell the new guys this, was chasing women. God knows I did some sick ass shit before I met my current wife. Oh my God, the sickness. I'm a sick alcoholic, and I tormented myself chasing girls. Not everybody has to do that. They may chase one and whatever. They get little arguments. Not me. I was sick, and maybe because I was caged for that long. I don't know, but thank God I had a good sponsor, and I had some good friends, and they were able to get me back on track. I told my sponsor, I said, this is making me feel guilty and this and that. He said, make you feel guilty? I said, yeah. He said, quit fucking doing it. Well, I hadn't thought about that. I thought there was some kind of route around it that we could figure this out. But it's always been the simplicity of the program. This just really helped me. Life today is good. It has its ups and downs. There's always difficulties. Life's life. But thank God I got some tools. I can deal with it. I got some good people I can always call. Phenomenal friends in this room. Always got my back. No questions about it. I never had that before. If I did, I knew I didn't feel like I did. There was always, what can I get out of you and all that crap. The journey's still on. I've done a bunch of retreats. I go to some Matt Talbot retreats, I'm out with these guys, and that is incredible. If you're new in recovery and you've never done a retreat, go participate in the retreat. Don't just go participate. Phenomenal stuff can happen. I do enjoy every year going to Boone for the Matt Talbot retreat. That's my thing. It may not be for everybody, but it's very cleansing. You meet all kinds of walks of life, and if you guys are ever interested, it's all men, co-ed. If you're ever interested, let me know. We can get you set up. But it's been good, and the journey continues. I've had a kid. My wife's in AA. We've had ups and downs, health issues, life. But as a whole, in the bowl, life is damn good compared to where I came from. And I never thought that I would have what I had today. I never thought that I would be equal to where my father made it to. And in a short amount of time, a lot of those things have come true. What else was I got? There was one other thing I just forgot I was going to say before I closed, and it was, I'll never forget one thing he told me, and it was, he asked me one time, he said, what's the biggest lie alcoholic can tell themselves? I don't know. We told a lot of lies, right? And he told me, he said, things will be different this time. And it took me a lot of pain to figure out that if I put a drink in my body, the result's going to be the same. If I don't die, I'm going to prison. That's just me. That's how I do. I'm going to trash everything real damn quick. But I'm grateful to be here. Thank you, Chuck. Good to be here.
Good job, Mike. Let's give him another hand.